thank you so much for being here. It's so exciting to have you. I mean, just your years of expertise and the fact that we have you on our advisory board is nothing short of absolutely incredible. I'd love to just turn it over to you. I think everybody is looking at wondering, like, where's the future going with genetic lifespan? What personal experience have you had that made you want to be a part of what we're doing here?
Well, definitely what we're doing is the future of medicine. Absolutely. And as I approach 50 years in practice, it's kind of hard to believe, but it's true. I'm really happy that I have decided, unlike a lot of my colleagues who decided to take early retirement at age 70, I'm just turned 74, because I think this is probably going to be the next couple of years are going to be the most exciting time in medicine ever, because of all the advances that are happening out there. I just recently attended a stem cell conference a couple of months ago, and the head of the conference made this statement, which really surprised, but that made me really happy to be involved, which is that if you can live until 2030, only 5 years from now, or even less than that, you'll be able to live to 120 years easily. And what he meant by that is because of all the breakthroughs that are coming right now and all the advancements in technology, we're actually going to, in the next 5 years, create ability for people to live a really long health span. And the key is the word health span as opposed to lifespan, because, you know, I'm not sure about everyone else out there, but I'm not interested in living to my 90s if I'm going to be in a wheelchair and have myself impaired mentally. And you mentioned that, you know, Alzheimer's disease is rapidly becoming one of the biggest issues in this country. But there's something really interesting that I have found, because I've tracked this over time. And what I have found is that there's been published studies that there's a curve in terms of the increase in Alzheimer's disease that actually parallels the same curve of the use of statins in practice. And so we all know that statins are drugs that are dispensed by traditional Western medicine docs to deal with elevated cholesterol levels. Unfortunately, they're given out as candy, pretty much. So many people are on statin drugs, and you're never really explained exactly what the side effects are when you're given a statin drug. And I can tell you that two major side effects. One is generalized muscle weakness throughout the body, the legs and limbs, but more importantly is dementia. Because what a statin drug does is it removes cholesterol, but also essential fatty acids from the body, and it's not selective, meaning it just doesn't take it out of the arteries and veins that surround the heart, but it does take it out throughout the entire body. And the brain is purely fat. So the brain survives on essential fatty acids. So if you're taking out these fats and essential fatty acids from the body, you're also impacting the brain and, of course, memory. So I really feel there's a direct correlation. And, you know, the way medicine is practiced today, it's really not healthcare. I like to refer to it as sick care, because they really don't do anything preventive for any patient, but they really only treat disease and treat sickness. And it's sort of a backwards way of you know, working with people. And I've always been in preventive healthcare and starting out in functional medicine in the 1970s. And that's what my programs have always been about. And I work with finding out what the underlying cause of the disease is, or an imbalance in the person's body, and treat that underlying cause. And that's what AgeCode does to an even greater degree. I think that most people have a false sense of security when it comes to their health. And what I mean by that is that when you go to your doctor, either for your yearly physical or whenever you go in, and they take a blood test on you, basically they'll say to you, well, there's nothing wrong, you're doing great, your labs are all in reference ranges. But what they don't tell you, and this is the most important thing of all, is that reference range comprises 95% of the population of the United States. So you're actually not only being compared against people that are healthy, but you're also being compared against people that are sick. And I think most of the population falls into that sick category. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be judged against those people. So when you go in and the doctor says you're in the reference range, he's really not telling you much at all. As a preventive medicine doc and a functional medicine doc, I use different ranges in my practice. I use comparison of maybe 20% of the population that are people in excellent health. So when patients come to me, I can determine and see things way before they show up. And that's really the key to healthcare. And what got me real excited about working with AgeCode was actually what happened when I took the AgeCode test. Because being a functional medicine doc, I considered myself to be in really excellent health, tested myself many, many times a year, always found myself in the ideal ranges of traditional blood tests, which really, in a way, only tell you what's happening at that moment in time, because blood tests are very static. They can change from week to week. It really doesn't give you much information. It gives you a general idea. But then when I did the AgeCode test, it was very interesting personally in that it showed some things that I never would have known. I can actually say, I can make the honest statement here that AgeCode saved my life, literally saved my life, because it found something that I had absolutely no knowledge that I was dealing with, because there were no symptomology around it, and nothing that I had tested for showed any signs of an issue. But I did the AgeCode test, and I'll be a little bit more specific here. So I always test my patients' vitamin D, because I find that vitamin D is probably one of the most important supplements anybody can take. And we all know that since we went through the whole COVID situation years ago. And to me, the difference between people that went through COVID without any issues and when people that actually passed away through COVID was literally your level of vitamin D at the time that COVID was around. And those patients that had really low levels of vitamin D, they did not survive. And patients that had high levels of vitamin D survived and did well. And I've always, prided myself in having very, very high vitamin D levels and the most optimum levels you can possibly have. The ideal ranges is between 80 and 100. Most people wind up, when I test them, are somewhere in the high 30s or 40s. And I always have to boost that because the vitamin D, as you know, really it gives you a determination of what your immune system is. And I've always wanted to keep my immune system as high as possible. So I had just done a vitamin D test, actually, a month before I did the AgeCode test, and it came out 101. And I was like celebrating because it was the first time I broke the 100 level there. And I'm thinking, this is really great. And then I did the AgeCode test. And the first thing the AgeCode test said to me was I was severely deficient in vitamin D. And so, of course, the first thing I did was I called Adam and Jeffrey on the phone, and I said to them, there's something wrong with your test. I can show you, I just did my vitamin D test, and I'm at 101, and your test tells me that I'm severely deficient in vitamin D, and to stop taking vitamin D, actually, it told me, what's wrong? And he said, did you look at the whole 120 pages of your test? And I said, no, I just looked at the summary. He said, well, go look at the test, and you'll understand why. And sure enough, as I took a deep dive into the results of the AgeCode test, I realized that I carried 4 genes that actually prevented vitamin D from entering the cells of my body. So when the test was done, I had 101 in terms of vitamin D in my serum, but all that meant was that it was floating around in my bloodstream. None of it actually was activated. None of it was getting into the cells of my body. So it was basically worthless, even though I had a full sense of security that I had these high levels of vitamin D. And then it also pointed out something else that I was totally unaware of, because it's something that's not typically measured for, and that was, it said specifically in the AgeCode report, check your parathyroid gland. Well, most people don't ever check their parathyroid gland. And if you ask people what their parathyroid glands are, most lay people don't even know what it is. They've never heard about it. It's a gland that surrounds the thyroid gland, and it's not routinely tested for. And there are no basic signs or symptoms to let you even know that there's something wrong. So I figured, if it told me this information about, vitamin D, and I understood what was going on, I had to take the next step. So I did a PTH test, which was a parathyroid hormone test, and it was totally off the charts high. So now I was a little concerned and worried because I had never taken that test before, and why is it like so off the charts? So I searched for a doc here at Cedars-Sinai in LA who specializes in this, and I went to see him, and I remember him telling me, well, the first thing he said to me is, don't feel bad. 90% of all the docs in LA don't recognize or diagnose parathyroid disease until the patients actually come into my office. And then he said, I'm really, really glad you did this test. So now we have to take the next step. And I said, of course, that's why I'm here. So he went on to proceed to tell me that I needed to do some nuclear scans of my thyroid and parathyroid to actually analyze what was going on, which I wound up doing. And lo and behold, when the reports came back, it found out that I had a parathyroid adenoma, and I had absolutely no idea or clue that that was occurring in my body. And it's pretty serious because number one, it could become cancerous, and number two, can cause complete kidney failure. And so had I not done the AgeCode test, I never would have had that information. And I went on to have surgery at the end of December to have the parathyroid removed. And since that period of time, we've retested and everything. I am now in perfect balance again. So literally, it did save my life. And I think that, most people take it for granted when they just have a regular lab test. And even the lab tests that are done on a routine yearly physical are very bare bones. They don't even, they just really look at the surface of what's happening. It's not even a deep dive. And when you do the AgeCode test, I can tell you it's going to leave no stone unturned. It's going to check every possible biomarker. As a matter of fact, when I got the test back and looked at it over, half the biomarkers I had never even heard about before. I mean, we do such a deep dive here that you'll see things that you've never even heard of before. But it's the most comprehensive protocol that I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, we in December as a company went to the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine conference, which I go to every year, by the way, and we presented there at a booth. And every doctor that approached me and came to the booth was totally, blown away by what we were offering, because they had never seen a lab offering this array of tests together. And with the advent of AI, which assists us to be able to interpret and compare these tests, we really have information here that's absolutely priceless in terms of what we can offer. And I've been telling every one of my patients, at least all of my patients over the age of 50, because I specialize these days in longevity medicine, that they absolutely have to do this test. If they do anything, you must do this test, because otherwise, you're really living blindly. You never know what's going to happen. And, being in my 70s and associating with a lot of my friends and colleagues of my age, I can tell you that within the last year, I have lost so many friends, close dear friends of mine of 40 years or more. In October, November, December, 3 of my best friends all passed away. And I honestly believe if they had done the AgeCode test before the situation occurred, they would have definitely known what was happening, and they could have proactively worked to prevent those particular diseases from occurring instead of just allowing it to happen. There are many times in one's life when it's been shown and proven that the body starts to make some significant changes in terms of, your health going south, so to speak. When you're 30 years old is the first time when things start to change. When you're 50 years old is the second. And then when somebody's in their 70s, they start to what we call fall off the cliff, because after 75, it's just open to anything coming about. And so if you don't do a test like this, there's no way you're ever going to know where you need to focus your attention. Just by knowing the age of every one of your organs, that alone gives us an ability to then focus our attention in our healthcare to working on those specific organs to create health. And then all the other pieces of information that are given are just, added cherry on the top, so to speak. So honestly, I can tell you that it was the best decision I ever made. Well, it was part of me coming aboard. They said, you need to do the test because you're going to be teaching it and you need to understand it. Had I not connected with genetic lifespan and actually had the test, who knows what would happen to me in the future. So there you go in terms of what my personal experience has been.
Wow, that's incredible, Doc Steve. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love hearing your personal testimony, because you did have such an incredible response to the AgeCode, and then the fact that you're saying it literally saved your life is just unbelievable. So we're so glad that it did. We're so glad that you're a part of our advisory board. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and share all of that with our audience. We appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.